Today we will consider Wright Mills's book, The Sociological Imagination, in which he criticizes the dominant paradigms in the social sciences, both grant theory and abstract empiricism.
This is book very important for social science, isn't it?
Yeah, it is second book in the International Sociological Association's book rankings after Max Weber's Economy and Society.
Let's take a closer look at what makes this book important.
So today, let's dive into something I think a lot of us feel. It's that sense of being, well, kind of trapped in our own lives sometimes.
Yeah, like your personal troubles feel huge, maybe too big to handle alone.
Exactly. You're stuck in your job or family stuff, or just your local scene, but you also sense these bigger forces at play way beyond your immediate world.
That feeling is spot on. It's something that sociologists see Wright Mills really zeroed in on.
Right, and that's our mission for this deep dive exploring his really important work, the sociological imagination.
Mills basically argued that what we need, especially now in this age of fact, he talked about where we're just flooded with information.
Drowning in it sometimes.
Right. We need a specific quality of mind. That's his term. It's a way to actually use all that information, to use reason to understand what's going on both out there in the world and, inside ourselves.
Okay, so this quality of mind, the sociological imagination, what did Mills really mean by that? Why did he think it was so crucial?
Well, at its core, the sociological imagination is about seeing the link, the connection between your own personal life story, your biography, and the big sweep of history, he famously said. Neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood without understanding both your personal wins, your failures. They're tangled up with these huge impersonal shifts in society.
That really flips the script, doesn't it? Makes you think your experiences aren't just yours alone.
Totally. Think about it, like when industrialization happened. A peasant didn't just randomly decide, oh, I'll be a factory worker.
Now, no massive historical forces change their entire world, their options.
Exactly. Or Mill's example, how war turns an insurance salesman into a rocket launcher. That's not just a weird career change.
It's society transforming individuals in really dramatic ways.
Precisely. And that leads us to one of Mill's absolute key ideas, the difference between personal troubles of milieu and public issues of social structure.
Okay, break that down. Troubles versus issues.
A trouble is private. It happens to you within your close circle, your immediate environment, your milieu. It's when values you hold dear feel threatened right there in your personal space.
So if one person in a huge city is unemployed, that's a personal trouble. We look at their situation, their skills, maybe bad luck.
Right. But, and this is where it gets powerful, what if it's not one person? What if in a nation of 50 million workers, 15 million are unemployed?
Then it can't just be 15,000 individual failings. That's something else entirely.
That's a structural issue, Mills says. The very structure of opportunity is collapsed. The solution isn't fixing individuals, it's looking at the society's economic and political setup.
Wow. Okay, and you could apply that to something like marriage too, right? We think of it as so personal.
Definitely a couple having problems that feels like a private trouble. But when, say, 1/4 of all marriages end in divorce within just a few years, like 250 out of 1,000,
That points to something bigger, a structural issue with the institution of marriage itself. Maybe family structures, maybe even other related institutions.
it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Like, how often do you, listening right now, feel this kind of vague anxiety or restlessness? And maybe, just maybe, it's connected to these larger shifts Mills is talking about.
That feeling of being adrift, Mills thought, often comes from being swamped by this age of fact, Too much information, not enough understanding.
Information overload.
Yeah, and people feel morally insensible, he said. They just try to retreat, become altogether private men.
Like sticking your head in the sand because the world feels too overwhelming. He called his time, and it sounds so much like ours, an age of uneasiness and indifference.
Because the big values aren't clear, or maybe we don't feel they're directly threatened in a way we can pinpoint. So instead of clear problems, we just get this malaise, this vague feeling that things aren't right.
And Mills noticed something else interesting, didn't he? How society kind of shifted its focus?
Yeah, he saw this weird move from talking about big things like, say, child labor,
To worrying about comic books.
or from poverty to mass leisure. And, crucially, how often problems get labeled as psychiatric.
So instead of seeing a societal problem, we pathologize the individual.
Exactly. Mills called it a pathetic attempt to dodge the big structural issues of modern life. It's easier to say someone needs therapy than to say the system is deeply flawed.
Which leads to his big challenge to the purely psychological view. He didn't put it all in the individual's mind.
No, he flat out said. Man's chief danger today lies in the unruly forces of contemporary society itself, like alienating ways of working, political control, global chaos. Basically, the way modern society itself shapes and changes us, our lives or goals. The dangers in the system, not just in our heads.
Okay, so that's the power of the sociological imagination, seeing our lives within that bigger context. But Mills also pointed out why it's often so hard to use it, especially within academia.
Oh yeah, he had some sharp critiques. One major target was what he called grand theory.
And Talcott Parsons was the main example there.
He was. Mills described Parsons' writing as well. Turgid, polysyllabic prose, basically super dense jargon.
Hard to even understand.
Mills suspected it might not be altogether intelligible. He actually went through the trouble of translating some of Parsons' paragraphs into plain English just to show how obscure it was.
He took something really dense and abstract about shared values and standards,
Yeah, pages of it.
almost, and boiled it down to, people often share standards and expect one another to stick to them. When they do, society can be orderly.
Pretty much. It sounds almost funny, but Mill's point was deadly serious.
Which was,
That this kind of language wasn't just bad writing, it actually hid what was really going on. It obscured power dynamics, economic forces, political struggles, he argued. Grand theory focused more on legitimations, sort of justifying why things are the way they are, rather than analyzing how institutions actually work. It turned everything into abstract concepts like idols and ended up basically defending the status quo, stable forms of domination, as he put it. It didn't ask the hard questions. So that's one extreme. What about the other end?
that he called abstract, and empiricism. This was the opposite problem in a way.
How did that work?
This style, he said, grabs onto one tiny piece of the research process, like surveys or statistics, and lets that dominate everything.
So focusing too much on the method.
Exactly. Confusing the tools with the actual subject. Mills saw it as a theoretical meaning. It didn't engage with big ideas. It was segmentalized, particularized.
Chopping things up into tiny bits.
Right. And crucially, systematically ahistorical and non-comparative. It only looked at small slices of the present, ignoring history and other societies.
It's like trying to understand the whole ecosystem by just analyzing 1 square foot of soil over and over.
That's a good analogy, Mills mocked. The idea that doing lots of these tiny, minute, careful studies would somehow magically add up to some grand, integrated understanding of society.
The building block idea.
Yeah, he argued. You rarely get more of a detailed research than the ideas you put into it in the first place. It becomes this very technical, maybe rationalized process, but it loses genuine human-focused reason.
And this kind of research often serves certain interests.
That was another key critique. He saw it lending itself to human engineering, basically research designed for administrative use by big institutions, corporations, the military, government.
So it becomes about managing people or predicting behavior for practical ends.
Pretty much. And he felt that attracted research technicians who might be good at the methods, but lacked, in his words, genuine intellectual puzzlement or passionate curiosity.
More like cheerful obedience.
That's his phrase. They weren't necessarily encouraged to challenge the powers that be.
So these two trends, grand theory and abstracted empiricism, they kind of create barriers to thinking sociologically. They create a bureaucracy of thought.
That's exactly what Mills called it, a bureaucratization of social study. These academic style and the cliques that promote them end up defining what counts as good work, handing out rewards, shaping careers.
So prestige might come from fitting in, from mastering the jargon or the method, rather than the actual intellectual value of the work.
That was his concern. It could stifle real creativity and critical thinking.
Okay, so if those are the traps, what's Mill's alternative? How do we actually do this? How do we cultivate that sociological imagination?
His ideal was the classic social analyst, who he described as an intellectual craftsman.
A craftsman like skilled labor, but for ideas.
Kind of. This person isn't tied down by rigid formulas or procedures. They focus on significant problems, real-world issues that matter, and they value clarity and efficiency in their thinking economy of procedure.
And how do they work?
It's like a continual shuttle, Mills said. Back and forth between the big picture, the macroscopic conceptions, and the specific details, the detailed expositions.
Connecting the grand theory with the grounded reality.
Exactly, linking the flight of theory with the painstaking crawl among detail. It's about making those connections constantly.
That sounds way more alive, more dynamic. Did he give any practical tips for becoming this intellectual craftsman?
He did really practical stuff. One big one was keeping a file, basically a journal, or a really active set of notes. He said you should use it to merge your personal life and your professional thinking. Capture those fringe thoughts, those random ideas that pop into your head, and see how they connect to your main work. It's about keeping your inner world awake.
I like that. And then what do you do with this file?
Well, another technique. Surprisingly simple. It's just rearranging it. Mix up notes from different sections. See what happens when unrelated ideas rub up against each other.
Trying to spark unexpected connections.
Precisely, he said. It helps loosen your imagination. Find unforeseen and unplanned linkages.
Makes sense? What else?
Play with words. Look up synonyms for your key concepts. Try defining them at different levels of generality, from very abstract to very concrete. It forces you to be precise and expands how you think about them.
Stroning your tools.
And also making types and cross-classifications. This was huge for Mills. He called cross-classification the very grammar of the sociological imagination.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means actively creating new categories, new ways of sorting things, and then systematically comparing the extremes, the different possibilities within those categories, to really map out the full dimensions of whatever you're studying.
So you're building frameworks, not just collecting facts.
Yes, and another thing, cultivate different perspectives. Try thinking about your problem like a political scientist would, or a psychologist, or a historian.
Put on different ads.
He even suggested writing little dialogues between these different viewpoints to force yourself outside your usual assumptions.
That's interesting. And he emphasized history.
Right? Absolutely. Essential a comparative and historical grip, he called it. You can't understand today without understanding yesterday, and you can't understand your own society without comparing it to others.
Like his point about America never having a feudal period which shaped it so differently from Europe.
Exactly, that historical and comparative lens is crucial.
And finally, how you structure your work.
He talked about organizing around themes, not just topics. A topic is just a subject, like, say, corporate executives.
Okay, but a theme is the underlying idea, the driving question that connects different topics together and gives the whole thing meaning and coherence.
Got it. So all these craftsmanship techniques ultimately lead back to clarity.
Yes, clarity and thought and clarity and communication. This brings us back to his critique of that turgid and polysyllabic prose the Socs speak.
He really didn't like academic jargon.
He thought it was mostly posturing, less about genuine complexity, more about the writer feeling insecure about their status, trying to sound important.
Ouch. So what's the fix?
Just ask yourself 3 honest questions before you write. 1. How complex is my subject really? 2. What status am I trying to claim here? And 3. Who am I actually writing for?
And the goal?
Simple communication, where what you mean, your circle of meaning, overlaps perfectly with what the reader understands.
It all comes back to that core promise of social science, doesn't it?
It does. Mills believed its purpose was to help us grasp the human variety, to understand the structure and the drift, the shaping and the meanings of your own.
To figure out where you stand in the big sweep of history. To understand your own life by seeing it in context.
And that understanding is directly linked to freedom and reason. Mills had a powerful take on freedom.
What was it?
He said, freedom is not merely the chance to do as one pleases, nor is it just picking between choices someone else gives you. Okay, freedom is first of all the chance to formulate the available choices, to argue over them, and then the opportunity to choose.
So, real freedom involves shaping the agenda, defining the possibilities.
Yes, and doing that requires reason, a bigger role for human reason in human affairs.
That feels incredibly relevant today, especially in our age of fact, where, like Mills worried, maybe we have more and more rationalized systems, but less actual human reason guiding them.
Which leads to the final, really provocative thought Mills left us with. Let's hear it. He asked, essentially, is it possible that our collective mind, our capacity for critical thought, is actually declining? But we don't notice because we're so distracted by all our technology, all our gadgets. Is that what rationality without reason looks like? Is that human alienation? Is that what happens when reason doesn't have a free role to play in shaping our lives?
So the question for you, our followers coming out of this deep dive into C. Wright Mills, is this, in this age of endless information and amazing tech, are you actually becoming more informed, more reasoned, more free?
Or is there a danger, as Mills feared, that we're becoming what he called cheerful robots? Efficient, maybe even happy, but not truly thinking, not truly free. Something to definitely mull over.